Webinar. I recognize that you all have busy lives, so thank you all very much for joining us today. Now, today's webinar will focus on the reading component of alphabetics, so make sure you're in the correct webinar. You may or may not be familiar with this term, but you probably know what it involves. Uh, the objectives for today's webinar are as follows. By the end of the webinar, participants will be able to define alphabetics and explain its function as one of the key components of reading, describe instructional strategies to help learners identify common word parts. And you're going to hear me say word parts a lot throughout the webinar. So if you happen to forget everything about the webinar, don't forget word parts, word parts, word parts. Participants will also be able to identify appropriate materials and resources for alphabetics instruction. Now let me just go over our agenda really quickly. in a few seconds, we're going to do a quick introduction, and then I'm going to talk about what alphabetics is and its importance. I'm also going to touch upon the goal of alphabetics instructions, and then I will proceed with the presentation on word parts. And we're going to actually see uh, a lesson teaching word parts uh, with a video. Then we're going to end the webinar with a discussion and with some questions. So, so at the very beginning of a webinar, I'd like to get a better idea of who's participating. So for obvious time limitations, we're going to take a poll. So do me a favor, would you guys please take the following survey on your screen and indicate the field in which you are currently teaching, whether it be ESL, ABE, ASC, or other. This will give me a good indication of who is in the webinar. And pretend that we have some nice elevator music while we wait. 12. Okay, so it looks like the majority ESL, some ABE. Okay, ESL's in the lead. ESL stays in the lead. Okay, so it looks like the majority of participants are in ESL, and we do have some ABE and a couple of ASC and other. Okay, all right. I'm going to broadcast the results for you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all again for being here. And thank you for joining us. All right, now let's get officially started. Now, this graphic represents the four components of reading, and alphabetics in the top left refers to the skills needed to decode and identify words quickly, accurately, and effortlessly. Today's webinar will focus on teaching word parts to strengthen students' alphabetic skills. So what is alphabetics? What is this term alphabetics? And why is it important? Now, again, you may or may not be familiar with this term, but you probably know what it involves. Alphabetics is the process of using letters in a written alphabet to represent meaningful spoken words. It basically refers to the skills that a reader uses to decode and recognize words in print. Now, why is alphabetics important? Let me go back to the previous slide. Alphabetics is important because it affects all of the other components. For example, in fluency, alphabetics increases automaticity of word recognition, accuracy, and speed. Now, in vocabulary, alphabetics helps the reader determine whether a word meaning is known in the reader's vocabulary. And lastly, in comprehension, strong alphabetic skills help readers focus on meaning since attention is not spent so much on individual words. So as you can see, alphabetics is important because it affects all the other components. Now, alphabetics is made up of two components, and that is phonemic awareness and word analysis. And let me just touch briefly upon each one. Now, what is phonemic awareness? Phonemic awareness is the ability to identify phonemes, and phonemes are basically individual sounds of unit in a word. So that includes like the first sounds, the last sounds. As you can see on the screen, the first sound in jump is the j, and the final sound is k. Those are phonemes. And the number of sounds, the number of phonemes in the word laugh is 3. We hear the l, a, f. So basically, phonemic awareness is the ability to identify sounds. Now, what is word analysis? Now, word analysis is the knowledge of the connection between written letters or letter combinations and the sounds they represent. Now, this is often called phonics skills, okay, an easier term to remember. And phonics skills includes, again, knowing the letter sound relationships and the common spelling patterns that are used to decode words. In this case, the word families like ik, oi, all. Phonics skills also includes being able to recognize sight words. And when I say sight words, I'm talking about those high frequency words and those words with phonic irregularity, like the, done, are. Now, phonics also involves using context. If you see here color and collar, they may seem familiar to some of our students, but the context helps determine which decoding is the correct one for the text. Now, finally, at the very bottom, phonics also includes knowledge of prefixes, suffixes, and roots, as well as knowledge of syllable rules and syllable types. Now, for beginning readers, and I'm talking about the 0 to 3 grade level equivalent students, the focus is on basic phonics, basic word analysis, and that includes the letter sound relationships. It includes the silent letters. It includes learning the consonant blends. It also includes the syllable rules, diagraphs, forgive me. It includes diagraphs, and it also includes the syllable rule patterns for one syllable words, in addition to the long and the short vowels. This is the focus for the beginning readers when it comes to basic phonics and word analysis. Now, the higher level phonics, the higher level word analysis is geared toward the intermediate readers, and these are the readers that are at the 4th through 8th grade level equivalency. Now, the higher level phonics and word analysis skills, that involves decoding multi-syllabic words. And the focus for the intermediate reader when it comes to phonics and word analysis is having this awareness that words are made up of parts. These multi-syllabic words are made up of parts. It also focuses on syllable patterns, syllable rules, and syllable types. In addition, there's also a strong emphasis on prefixes, suffixes, and roots. Now, this webinar focuses on instruction for these intermediate students. Now, before we move on, I know I just gave you a lot of information, but I'd like to take a quick poll just to see what your background is. On the screen, you have 2 surveys. This first one that I'm pointing to, I'd like to know, have you ever received professional training in phonics or word analysis? Please indicate with a yes or a no to give me a general idea of the extent of your experience with phonics. And on the right-hand side, a second survey, how comfortable are you teaching phonics and word analysis? So please take a second to answer each of the surveys. The first one with the yes or no, and the second one, how comfortable are you? I'll give you a couple more seconds. This is going to give me a good idea of the extent of your experience with phonics and word analysis. Okay. All right. Let me just broadcast the results here. Great. Okay. Now it looks to me like the majority of you have not received professional training in phonics and word analysis. And over here, it's kind of even. somewhat comfortable and comfortable. Okay. All right. This is good. Now, for those of you with little background and who feel, if you may feel less than somewhat comfortable teaching phonics, you're probably going to need to familiarize yourself with the basics before you attempt to deliver focused, systematic instruction. Now, at the end of the webinar, I will provide you with some great resources that you can use to review. And for those of you with some background and who feel comfortable teaching phonics and word analysis, this webinar will hopefully enhance what you're already doing. So thank you very much for taking the survey, and I'd like to move on to instruction. All right, here we go. So the ultimate goal for Alphabetics instructions is to help students decode words that are known to them by providing word analysis strategies with opportunities to practice and apply those strategies. Now, most adult learners at the intermediate level, they have a good basic phonemic awareness. They know the basic letter sound correspondences, and they can blend most sounds together to read words. They recognize, for the most part, silent letter combinations and many sight words. And they can also decode most familiar one and two syllable words. Now, they may divide many two and some three syllable words correctly to decode them, but they usually get stuck with the longer multisyllabic words. Now, evidence-based reading instruction recommends practice with the higher level word analysis skills to help them decode these longer words more successfully. So let's take a look at what the higher level word analysis or phonics entails. Now, when I'm talking about higher level alphabetics, I'm talking about making sure the students that they're aware that they have a good understanding that words are made up of parts and that we use those parts to identify known words. And that includes recognized common syllables and syllable types so that our readers can break the word into its parts and then put it back together. And also being able to divide words in more than one way, having some flexibility. Vida, I see that you have your hand raised. Can I please have a link to on today's webinar? Okay. Um, Catherine, is that possible for the PowerPoint slides on today's webinar? Okay, let me.
We'll be providing the materials as part of the recording, so we'll follow up with everybody to let them know when
Great.
that's ready within the next few
Okay, great.
days.
I'd say thanks, Vida. Thanks for asking. Okay, so you guys, so evidence-based reading instruction recommends focusing on and teaching word parts so that readers can use those parts to identify known words, so that readers can break the words into its parts and then put it back together. And when I say word parts, I'm talking about syllable types, prefixes, suffixes, word families, and many of the common word parts found in numerous words. The more familiar readers are with those word parts, the better they will be able to identify and read multisyllabic words quickly, accurately, and effortlessly. The goal here is to create a friendly environment of known word parts. And this will encourage students to look for word parts they are already familiar with so that again they can successfully identify and read the challenging multisyllabic words with more ease. Now, one effective and simple way to introduce students to the awareness that words are made up of parts is to teach students the concept of compound words. And uh, Curtis, students are identifying, if I can interrupt for a second, students are identifying known words, known, not unknown. It's actually both, Curtis. It is known and unknown, right now, for the most part, some of our students, for example, they know the word community, but when they read it, they may not know it's community. So the first goal is to help them identify the words that they already know, because just because they can't decode it, they can't identify it, doesn't mean they don't know the word. So it is words that are known and unknown, but we want to focus primarily on the ones that are known. And of course, everything that we're doing here is also going to help them identify words that are unknown. And when I say unknown, I mean by uh, the meaning of the vocabulary word. So it's possible they can read, they'll be able to decode a word successfully, but they don't know what the word means. Did that clarify your question, Curtis? So it's identifying both known words and unknown. Okay. All right. So one effective and simple way to introduce students to this awareness that words are made up of parts is teach them compound words. And I'm sure many of you have already taught compound words in your classes. Teaching compound words gives readers a clear visual of this awareness that words is made up of parts. So if you look at sunset, if you look at handsome, hopefully you see two word parts. And this is a really, really easy way to hook them in with this whole concept of word parts. Start with compound words. Now, another way to give readers a clear visual of this awareness that words are made up of parts is to teach the concept of prefixes, suffixes, and root words. Again, I'm sure many of you have taught prefixes and suffixes and root words. In this particular case, I use it to again strengthen the foundation that words are made up of parts. In pre-order, we see two parts. So I want to get my students to familiarize themselves with word parts. And again, the more word parts that are known to them, the quicker, the more accurate, and the more effortlessly they'll be able to decode the word. And once you establish a strong foundation of the awareness that words are made up of parts, with compound words, prefixes, suffixes, and root words, you can then move on to teach the common syllable types that make up numerous words. And that's also a focus of this webinar. So again, in addition to compound words, prefixes, suffixes, and root words, evidence-based reading instruction recommends focusing on and teaching the syllable types so that readers can use parts to identify the known words, and again, so that they can break the words into its parts and then put it back together. Let me see a show of hands. How many of you are familiar or were familiar with the 6 syllable types prior to this webinar? Can I see a show of hands? How many of you were familiar with the syllable types? Okay, a few of you. All right, thank you. Thank you. Now, hopefully, you all had the opportunity to review and study the basic syllable types for the pre-webinar assignment. Right now, if you didn't, because I know you're all busy, I'm going to do a quick review of each one so that we're all on the same page. All right? And in a few minutes, I'm going to give you all the opportunity to ask any questions you may have. So, let's take a look at these 6 syllable types. Gib, you have a question? Or you're raising your hand? Okay, if you have a question, guys, put it in the chat box to the left. And let's begin with the 6 syllable types. The first syllable type is the closed syllable. Now, as you can see, the closed syllable has one vowel, ends in a consonant or two, and the vowel sound is short. On this slide, you can see words that are made up of closed syllables. And I can tell you there are many, many more. Once you familiarize yourself with the closed syllable, you're going to start noticing that it's everywhere. Many, many words. The second syllable type is the silent E syllable, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Now, as you can see, the silent E syllable has one vowel followed by a consonant followed by an E. and that E is silent, and it makes the preceding vowel long. Now on the slide, if you can see, there are words made up of the silent E syllables, and if you notice, the words are made up in combination with the closed syllable that we just saw in the previous slide. Now, show of hands, do you see the word parts that make up each of these words? Yes. Okay. Good. Good. Remember, keep in mind, we want to be familiar with word parts. Take a look at this third slide. The third slide is the R-controlled syllable. Now, the R-controlled syllable has a vowel followed by an R, and that R modifies the vowel sound. Again, on the slide, you can see the words are made up of R-controlled syllables, also in combination with the closed syllable, and if you can see, it's also in combination with the silent E syllable. Now, in the fourth syllable is the consonant LE syllable. Now, this is a final syllable in which the E is silent. Therefore, it sounds just like the consonant. Again, on the slide, you can see words that are made up with the consonant LE syllables in combination with the closed syllable and the open syllable, which I'm about to discuss next. Now, the open syllable is the fifth syllable type, and this syllable ends in one vowel, and the vowel is usually long. Again, on the slide, you can see words that are made up of open syllables in combination with closed syllables. And again, I want you to notice on how these words are made up of parts, and these parts are syllable types. And the final syllable is the double vowel syllable. Now, a double vowel has two vowels, and together they make one sound. On the slide, again, you can see words that are made up of double vowel syllables. Now, earlier I touched upon flexibility. Now, one thing we want our students to be able to do is to identify word parts in more than one way. So we want them to be flexible in how they approach the words that they decode. Now, here's an example of being flexible when it comes to the double vowel syllable. When a word does not make sense with two vowels together, students need to be aware that they have the option to approach it differently. As you can see on the slide, separating the two vowels actually creates two separate word parts. And again, the idea here is that focusing on and teaching the syllable types will help students use those word parts to identify known words, and so that readers can break a word into its parts and then put it back together. Now, before I move on, I just want to mention that I know that there are countless of exceptions in the English language, okay, and including that pesky schwa. Don't even get me started with the pesky schwa. So I am very aware that there are countless exceptions. I'm not saying ignore the exceptions. I'm suggesting that you first build a strong foundation of this awareness of word parts with 6 syllable types, and then bring in this awareness of the exceptions as they arise. Now, the resources I will recommend at the very end, they address these exceptions well, and they address them in a timely manner. So again, please be aware that I know that there are exceptions, but I'm going to give you some resources that will help you focus on this first and then address the exceptions in a timely way. So let me move on. Let's put our newfound knowledge of syllable types to the test with a short activity. Now, as part of the pre-webinar assignment, you were asked to identify the words on this slide by syllable types. So if you did, great. And if you didn't, we're going to practice here. Let's see how well you understand the syllable types. Up here, I have the word north. I have the word north. Please help me, using the survey up here, identify the word by syllable type. And we're going to start with north first. Oh. And I have the little table here to the left so you can, okay. Overwhelming response, the R controlled. Good. Now, yes, number one is the R controlled. Congrats. Let's go to number two, you guys. Look at number two, slant. Slant. Please identify this word by its syllable type. Number two, right here, slant. What syllable type is this word slant? Can you all see the second survey here for the word slant? Slant. Okay, I'll give you some think time. Sorry about that. And again, you can refer to the table. Once you identify slant, you can go on to paste. Thank you for your participation. Put your knowledge to the test here. Good. Okay. All right. You guys are great students. Slant was indeed the closed syllable. Good. I know number three is a little tricky, but you're teachers. You can handle a little trick here and there. Good. I'll give you another moment. Yes, paste. Okay, let me 22, couple of more seconds. Couple of more seconds. Okay, yes, paste. We consider the silent E syllable. The ST, which is a blend, we consider it as one unit of sound. Well, I consider it one. And this E is silent, it makes the A long. Great. Now you guys, if for whatever reason you chose the wrong syllable, no worries. You have the table here and you're going to have plenty of time to review it. So let's move on. Let's look at some other words. Let's look at these here. Little, gym, and toast. Let's start with little. Please identify the word by its syllable type. And I'll give you a couple of seconds to look at the table, to look at your cheat sheet. Good. Identify the word parts that match the syllable types. Great, I'll give you a couple more seconds. You guys are doing a great job. Angela, you have a question? Okay, great. While I wait for the polls to finish, Angela has a question. Why do you say little, little? Why do you say little instead of little? Did I say little? Little, little. Probably tried it too soon. You know what? Why I say little, little, little? I didn't realize I said. I didn't realize I said little. Little, little. I guess when you pronounce the D instead of a T. Little, little. I'm probably speaking too fast, Angela. Little, little. Thank you. No, thank you, Angela. Put put me on Keep me on my toes, please, please. Little. Yeah, I guess when I say it fast, little, little, little. I'll be more aware of it. All right. British has the sharp T sound. Thank you, Francisca. Little. Little by little. We'll get used to this. All right. Let me just broadcast the results really quickly. Toast is the double vowel. Little for Angela is the consonant LE, and it is made up also with the close, but because it has the consonant LE, we consider it the consonant LE um, syllable. Ruth, the soft T. I love it. Shirley, yes, a good lesson on flap T. Oh, great, great. I'm gonna look over your comments also when I look at the recording. And Jim, closed syllable. Good. Can closed syllables begin with the consonant? Yes. Consonant? Absolutely. Yeah. The closed syllable has one vowel and it ends with the consonant or two. Okay, great. Great, great chats, guys. Let's move on to the third part. We have two more words. Please identify these words by syllable types. Free and no. The soft T. I'm going to remember that. The soft T. Softy. Oh. Okay, free and no. Mm-hmm. Okay, free. Good. I'll give you a couple of more seconds to complete the survey. I agree, Celine. Free is tricky. Yes, free is tricky. I just to keep it simple for myself, I myself go with the double vowel. Only because the silent E, usually you have vowel consonant plus the silent E. But since I have two vowels here, I just keep it simple. I just keep it simple. Thanks, Sharon. So free, you guys, double vowel. And no, open. Okay, good. We have a unanimous answer there. Okay, good, good. So let me go back. Let me go back to thank you guys for participating in these surveys and thank you for applying your knowledge of these syllable types. Hopefully by the end, you'll be experts. Now, let's go on to the next assignment, the next activity, I should say. Now, here in the second part, we have words made up of these word parts, these syllable types. And the idea is to identify these syllables by type. Okay. So this first word, triangle, now if you did it at home, great. And if not, you can think about it right now. What I'm going to do is this slide is animated, so I'm going to show you the responses. Triangle. That word is made up of three parts, and it's an open syllable, a closed syllable, and the consonant LE. Again, if our students are familiar with these syllable types, and these syllable types are known to them, it'll help them decode the word. Now look at exponent. Exponent. Closed, open, closed. And again, I'm going back to these knowledge of syllable types, knowledge of word parts, so that they can decode the words quicker, more accurately, and the goal is for them to do it effortlessly. Holly, holly, closed and open. And then we have holy, holy, open and open. Remember, the Y's usually are 6 syllable. Now let's look at fiberglass. If you can see, there are 3 syllable types there: the open, the R controlled, and the closed. Ruth, for the ing and the ang, those are I consider them like suffixes, like ending suffixes. So I categorize that under the ending suffixes. If we take a look at detain, we have the open syllable and the double vowel. And then look at this one, commentator. Close, close, open, R control. And again, we want our students, to be familiar with these syllable types to be able to help them to identify the parts that are known so that they can be able to decode the word quickly, accurately, and effortlessly. And Ruth, king and rang, the ing and the ang in that case, I consider them like the word families. The word families, ring, king, bing, uh, ling. So I consider that in that case the word families. Thanks, David. And the final one, which is a compound word, a silent E syllable and closed syllable. Closed syllable. Okay, good. Now, let me go to the third part of the activity. Here we have 3 words, and the idea was to divide the words into syllables and then identify it by syllable type. So ideally, we look at this word circle, and I recognize the CLE. I recognize the CLE syllable, and hopefully that's what our students will also recognize. And again, going back to the word parts, separate into word parts. And this is what I did, is hopefully you did the same thing. Sir, R controlled, and then the consonant LE. Now look at this one, beforehand. Again, focus on the word parts. Focus on the word parts. Here's what I did. Triangle. Good. Before I move to beforehand, Ruth. So here in try, open syllable, and I would keep it as a closed, and the GLE I would keep it as a consonant LE syllable. And again, remember, we want to teach our students to be flexible. So if one doesn't fit, they could try it a different way. We want them to also have more than one option to do that. Now look at beforehand. B for hand. Closed syllable, silent E, and hand. Closed syllable. This second one, the for, I went with the silent E syllable. I know some of you may go for the R control. No one's going to die. But as long as you recognize the syllable type and you recognize it and you pronounce it quickly, accurately, and effortlessly. And the last one, aftermath. Aftermath. Closed syllable, R controlled, closed syllable. And again, you guys, we want to focus on teaching our students these 6 syllable types so that we can build a strong foundation on their knowledge of syllable types so that they can recognize these word parts and, again, read the parts that are known to them so that they're able to read it quickly, accurately, and effortlessly. Now, are there any questions so far? I know we've done a lot so far. Do you guys have any questions? Teach word parts. Do you see how knowing the syllable types can be beneficial to our students who struggle in their alphabetic skills? If there are any thoughts, any questions, any challenges, feel free to type them in the chat box that we have here. Now keep in mind, at the end of the webinar, I'm going to give you some resources that will help you with this whole component of alphabetics. Vita, yeah, use the term word parts, because when you say word parts, it could include words in compound words. You can include the prefixes, suffixes, the syllable types. would this information confuse some of the students? Later on, Sachiko, later on, if you present this in in manageable parts, I usually do one by one, and I take my time. I don't do it. I don't teach all 6 syllables at once. I usually start with the lesson on compound words. I usually do something with prefixes and suffixes, and then I do the syllable type. So it's not all at once. And in my experience, my students have they've actually enjoyed this and they've learned from it. And the more parts that they're aware of, the more that they start seeing them when they're reading. Celine, I would do small groups. I do small groups because not everyone's going to need this. Okay. And Amanda, let me see, showed that word families can help with spelling. Yeah, word families are also helpful. Again, word families, I consider them word parts. Yes, and I've also taught word families as well. Um, Number 6, the LE, lending in a variety of contexts. Sharon, when it's interesting that you say that the consonant LE syllable, that I think that's what you're referring to. Um, Usually, with in my experience, that has been one of the easier. That's been one of the easier syllables to teach because it's easily recognizable. Um, so yeah, in the LE, remember the consonant LE is a final syllable. So when I teach it, it's a final syllable. We're looking at it. If it's in the end, that's the syllable that I'm talking to. If it's at the beginning, it's going to be different. Can parts be syllables also? Yes, Antonio. Um, Ruth, students have trouble with diphthongs ow versus ah. Yes, buckle, handle. Ruth, yeah, and you know what? And there are some students that are going to have trouble with certain sounds. And for the life of me, I know I've had some students who there are just some sounds that are not in their hearing. Um, they just can't get some of the sounds. I don't know what to tell you about that. But I know when I show a lot of words with the OU versus the AW, um, it just helps students to see, and and for some of them it could be an exception because they know that they may not be able to hear it. So let's see, Wendy, is LE as in label considered the same as LE? Um, it's actually consonant LE, so here it's different. Here, Wendy, label, lay would be an open syllable, and bull, this includes the schwa. And after you've introduced the 6 syllable types, then you go into the schwa and all the other exceptions. The schwa is very troublesome, so but it's not impossible to teach. So here in bull, we hear the schwa sound. Curtis, absolutely. Yeah. A lot of my students, for some reason, they do not see the ending of words. I don't know what it is. When the words are isolated, they can do it, but when they're reading in sentences, they just automatically um, they omit the words. They omit the words. Thank you, Francisca. That's a good, that's a good point. Now, you guys, I wanted to move on really quickly because I want to show you guys a video of an alphabetics lesson teaching one of these syllable types, and it's actually going to put it all together for you. So I'm going to come back to these questions in a few minutes. Hopefully toward the end, I'll come back and I'll answer the questions that are remaining. Okay. Now, when it comes to alphabetics instruction, there are a couple of guidelines that you probably want to take into consideration. Um, let's see. The best way to go about planning alphabetics instruction is to use direct explicit instruction, and hopefully you all had the opportunity to watch the video in the pre-webinar assignment. Um, a recent review of the research of adult education literacy instruction suggests these instructional features on the screen. Systematic instruction, teach one or two skills at a time, and make the lessons short, less than 30 minutes. And Celine, to answer your question, it's recommended small group versus large group or one-on-one, depending on the need. Now, what you see on the slide is an observation guide, and you all received this handout in the pre-webinar assignment. It lists the steps of direct explicit instruction. Um, right now, you're in a few seconds, you're going to watch a video, and I want you to use this handout to observe the alphabetics lesson that you're gonna watch. In the video, you're going to see myself doing an alphabetics lesson on the closed syllable to a small group of adult students in my AB reading class. Please watch the video and be prepared to talk about the steps of direct explicit instruction that I use in teaching this lesson. So please use this chart in your handout to record any observations. Right now I'm going to hand it over to Catherine Green. Catherine, now if you didn't get to watch the video, the good news is that it will be available post-webinar. So you will have the opportunity to look at it again. And while you're looking at it, I want you to use the observation chart so that you can jot down notes and you can see what did I do to introduce the lesson? What was the hook? How did I model? What was the guided practice? So that will help you plan your instruction for each of the syllable types. You can do the same thing for each of the syllable types. That's just a good template for you to use. And again, if you didn't watch it, you can do it afterwards. And if you did watch it, I hope that you got a good idea of how to deliver a syllable lesson to students. Okay. Now, let me move on. Let me move on here. Before we finish, I want to get to the resources. The resources, because I think it's important for you guys to have some resources. Before I move on, strengthening students' alphabetic skills will strengthen other reading components. Focusing on and teaching word parts is an effective way to help readers identify and decode words more quickly, accurately, and effortlessly. Now, I do want to mention, ladies and gentlemen, that it does require a lot of time, effort, and knowledge and practice on your part before delivering this kind of instruction to students. So once you get it, once you're comfortable, then it's going to require a lot of time and effort and multiple opportunities for the students to get accustomed to using word parts to help them identify and decode words quickly, accurately, and effortlessly. Now remember, alphabetics, we teach words in isolation. Um, Beginning readers need to focus on phonemic awareness and basic phonics skills. The higher level is the syllable rules and the types, the affixes. It'll help them decode multisyllabic words. Most intermediate students may not need basic phonics, but many will benefit from higher level phonics. Some will have gaps, so you can address those accordingly. Uh, we, we recommend direct explicit instruction with alphabetics lesson and make them short, systematic is recommended, and small groups are most effective. Now, on the screen, you see some resources. The Mega Word series is a great resource to teach the syllable types and word parts. Books 1 talks about, actually deals with the syllable types. Book 2 gets into prefixes and suffixes. The Making Sense of Decoding and Spelling, that's also a great resource, and it's free. If you follow that link, you're going to get a teacher's guide, a student guide. You're going to get it all. There's also the Applying Research for Reading Instruction for Adults. If you read Chapter 4, that's also going to give you some more information on basic level phonics. And the Laubach Readers Press. I want to show you, I got these from Lakeshore Learning, and they're literally word parts. Here on the screen, you see consonant blends and word families. You also have uh, compound words, and they're literally, guys, in word parts. And there's also prefixes and suffixes. And it's such a great resource. It really brings this whole idea of word parts to life. And if I say word parts one more time, I know you'll understand why I'm saying word parts. So that concludes this webinar. Thank you. If there are any final questions, any final thoughts, let me see. Let me go back here. Let's see. Okay. If there are any final questions, any topics, again, if you didn't watch the video, please watch it post-webinar, and that way you'll see all of this being put together in that lesson. And right now, we're exactly at 2:45. So if there are any comments, any questions, any concerns, I see a couple of people are typing. I want to thank you guys all. Good. Catherine just posted the links for the webinar in the chat pod on the left. Thank you, Catherine. Yes, Vita, word parts, word parts, word parts. Go into your weekend thinking word parts. And if you forget your name, just don't forget word parts, because your name is made of word parts. But don't use your name, though. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you. Any final comments, questions? Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Tanya. Okay. And for those of you, if this was your first webinar, thank you for giving me the honor. I appreciate it. Dr. Hodo, I know some of you is the first webinar. Thank you. Thank you. And remember, little, little. Thank you, Angela. A little bit here, a little bit there. Word parts. Have a great weekend. Catherine, any final
Yeah,
comments?
I just wanted to thank you so much, Guillermo, for leading this. You did a tremendous job packing a lot of information into a really small period of time, and I think we learned a lot through the exercises and the videos. The chat pod has a couple links to the same video in case you didn't get to see it all. Please, please plan to come back on Thursday, May 14th at the same time when we will be with Guillermo and look at fluency in reading instruction. This again was sponsored by CalPro's Electronic Community of Practice. We hope you are members. If you're not already a member, please do consider joining. That would be a great place to continue the discussion and ask questions. I'll be glad to follow up with all of you on Monday and send out reminder links of where you can find that and where the archive materials will be. There is the online video library, so that's where the recording will be. We'll also put it in the eCoP. Thanks again, everybody, for spending Friday afternoon with us learning together. All right, we're going to close this webinar and direct you to an evaluation, and we'll just ask for your feedback to let us know what we're doing right and what we can do to make it even better. All right, thanks, everybody. I'm about to sign